Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And I'm coming to you straight out of St. Louis, Missouri. And this particular video, which is opinion based, has a little bit to do with the biggest rapper to ever come out of St. Louis, which we all know is Nelly, and how a alleged cult bought his abandoned Wildwood house that has been vacant for almost 20 years. And his house and the association with an alleged cult that bought it and have done nothing with the house. And people are going through it. Several kids have broken into the house, taking pictures, running around, and causing damage to this abandoned mansion. And just for disclosure purposes, I've been out there. I know Nelly casually, and I know his brother Eric pretty well. So here it goes. More on the alleged cult that bought Nelly's crumbling mansion. Neighbors of the Kingdom of God Global Church, an organization many accuse of being a cult, say that strange occurrences around church-owned properties in West County, St. Louis, have left them confused and at many times even frightened. There's absolutely a lot of questions about what exactly is going on with this group. Chesterfield prosecuting attorney Tim Engelmeyer tells Riverfront Times. They could certainly run whatever organization they want to run out of the dozens of commercial areas around Chesterfield, but they choose to kind of land right in the middle of neighborhoods. The Riverfront Times previously reported on the church purchasing Nelly's old mansion in Wildwood, as well as a house in Chesterfield on Wild Horse Meadow Drive, that the church vacated after 4 years and numerous neighbors' complaints related to the 30 or more people allegedly living in the residence. In total, the Kingdom of God Global Church owns at least 9 properties in St. Louis County. 9. Name of the group, the Kingdom of God Global Church. Attorney Engelmeyer says that he understands neighbors being concerned by some of what they are seeing happening around church-owned properties. People were walking around the residence at night with suits on, and the city filed 2 municipal ordinance violations at that property before the church moved out. It's the one in Chesterfield, Attorney Engelmeyer says. One of the violations was for running a commercial enterprise out of a residential subdivision. They tried to assert these were simple Bible studies, but the scope of what was going on there was much greater than simple Bible studies, Attorney Engelmeyer says. He adds, I've seen pictures of children being led out of that house. They're all holding hands in a long line and being loaded into a van. That's unusual in the middle of a subdivision, and it alarms people. In addition to Nelly's former mansion, the church also purchased 2 other undeveloped parcels that border it. The church also owns a $1.7 million house on Hager Lane in Chesterfield, on a heavily wooded street tucked between the end of Route 109 and the Spirit of St. Louis Airport. The church bought the house and adjoining property in 2020. After hearing about the complaints from neighbors on Wild Horse Meadow Drive, an individual living on Hager Lane said it sounded similar to what she dealt with in her secluded corner of Chesterfield. And of course, many of these subdivisions have HOA, homeowners associations, where there are definitely rules and regulations on how to maintain and live a normal existence where you're not disturbing your neighbors. And those are, HOA has legal rights. They weren't creating a bad thing. They weren't smoking or drinking or yelling. They were just playing basketball, she says, of the use at the house. She was more concerned for their well-being, wondering what such a large number of boys were doing all in one house. The church has been accused of using its followers in a manner akin to telemarketers, having them work long shifts cold calling and messaging people on Facebook to solicit donations. So look out for that. The church also operates a dream interpretation phone line. So this church is reaching out to people on Facebook, trying to get funds. They own property in Michigan and a few other states, and people are not so sure if this is a cult, and they're just trying to solicit money to do whatever they want, not necessarily following God's laws or ways of life. Almost like a Ponzi scheme. According to Attorney Engelmeyer, strict zoning laws govern what individuals can and cannot do in residential areas, which is what I just said, HOA. He says his office is responsive to neighbor complaints about zoning laws being broken, but his office doesn't patrol the city searching for infractions. Coming in and out of church-owned properties, usually late at night around midnight or 1 a.m. So they're not, he says his office is not there to surveillance who's coming in and out of there. Security cameras affixed to a barn across the street from the church's property often recorded high-end cars leaving the property in the middle of the night, headed toward nearby Etherton Road. The cars always return 10 or 15 minutes later. In our mind, what could they possibly be doing out there outside that road? The individual on Hager tells the Riverfront Times. There's no stores there. There's nothing. Something was going on. The neighbors said the church was under the impression that when they bought the house, they had exclusive rights to the streets running from their property to Etherton Road. She says that a man from the church tried to stop a neighbor from entering the subdivision from Etherton Road, so there was an altercation, this neighbor says. They got set straight with that one. All three neighbors of Kingdom of God Global Church owned properties who, in his research, the Kingdom of God, when he researched the Kingdom of God on the internet, it seemed scary because one of the pictures we pulled up, he was fraternizing with the guy from North Korea, one neighbor says. The neighbor is likely referring to a well-produced video published by the church in which the organization's leader, this is the Kingdom of God's leader, David E. Taylor, predicts the reunification of North Korea and South Korea, a prophecy Taylor says Jesus relayed to him in a dream. The video contains newsreel footage of Kim Jong-un. I tell you gotta watch. I just did a previous video about the gentleman in Atlanta, Eligio Bishop, who had carbonation. And you gotta be very careful and utilize the 5 senses that God gave you, the common sense. When people are talking about being the Messiah and they're seeing visions of doomsday, which never comes, those predictions never always fall short, I think you should run the other way. It's a form of manipulation and control. In church videos, Taylor frequently weighs in on global geopolitics. In a church video published on YouTube in March, Taylor claims to have predicted 9/11, saying that the terrorist acts were financed by Russia. Now, Taylor says Russia is sneaking nuclear submarines to the United States shores. The video's narrator states that God sent Taylor to the country's end-time general, to be the country's end-time general. God sent him. I just said it. Whether it's David Koresh, Eligio Bishop, when you look up these cult-type leaders, they are the vessel from God to humans to relay this message in some kind of messianic way. Run the other way. So he said that the video's narrator states that God sent Taylor to be the country's end-time general and help avert the Russian attack. Taylor also frequently claims to perform miracles healing the sick. Same thing Eligio Bishop with Carbonation out of Atlanta, who just got convicted and and sentenced to life in prison. An individual who lives near Timpage Drive in Chesterfield, where the church owns another $2.1 million house, tells the Riverfront Times that the church's property has been an annoyance in the area, but that a man who identifies himself as the property manager has tried to address concerns. The church installed bright lights, and there's a person who lives by that says the Timpage neighbor also says that when the church first bought the property, they planned to use it as a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center. The RTF previously reported that a contractor who worked on the church's Timpage property wrote a letter to the city of Chesterfield stating that the house had 20 to 30 people staying at the property zoned residential. You see the repeated narrative. They're buying these multi-million-dollar houses, raising all this money on Facebook, and then they're dumping 20 and 30, 40 people in there, which is a violation of HOA and all kind of residential laws. So there's something else going on. Neighbors around both the Hager and the Timpage property says that the church occasionally threw massive parties on the properties. A 4th of July event on Hager drew hundreds of people and even included tents pitched on the property for people to stay in, a la music festival. The church has participated in at least one event in St. Louis City. Last November, it worked with St. Louis Metropolitan Police on a Thanksgiving dinner giveaway in North City. Both the police and Joshua Media Ministries International, an organization closely affiliated with the church, posted photos of the event to their social media pages. They're showing like they're lining up with law enforcement and doing great things, and then they're posting them on Facebook to solicit individuals for money and funding for their organization. And you have to remember, there's almost 360 million people in America. So you don't have to get that many people to raise a lot of money. And they must have a lot of money because they're buying multi-million-dollar pieces of property. They got 9 of them. They have some in Michigan. So it doesn't take that many people to make donations for you to raise millions of dollars. According to police spokeswoman Evita Caldwell, city police officers participate in several community engagement events at the school in conjunction with various community organizations. Nelly's property has been abandoned for almost 20 years. On Hager Lane, it appears some neighbors that the church may have recently left. So the Hager property, it seems like people have left that piece of property, maybe due to the complaints. In December, they had like 17 U-Haul huge trucks come down the driveway, a neighbor tells the RTF. So we knew they were moving everything out at that point. The house right now appears to be empty. So they did their fundraising, and I guess the complaints or whatever legal maneuvers that neighborhood had put into effect, they decided that the pressure was too much and they left the Hager property. According to 2 people, church either has recently or currently, according to 2 people, this church has recently or currently is being investigated by the FBI. That's the whopper. This neighbor on Hager Lane says that once when Chesterfield police responded to complaints about a large number of cars being parked by the church's property impeding traffic, an officer told her that the FBI was investigating the church. A former neighbor of the church on Wild Horse Meadow Drive says that he was interviewed by the FBI about the church. The individual living near the Timpage property said, "We keep joking that one day we're going to see guys in tactical gear walking through our yard going to storm their complex or whatever." So that's the story. You have an alleged cult that has purchased Nelly's house and has done absolutely nothing with it. They've had it for a few years now. It's still abandoned. Young kids are breaking into Nelly's old mansion and doing videos. And that has become a nuisance out there in Wildwood. The neighbors over there have called the police over 24 times. And this Kingdom of God Global Church has hit the radar of the FBI with all this large amounts of money that they've raised, and what are they fiduciarily doing with these funds. There's also been a rumor that they were interested in buying this huge complex that used to be owned by Boeing or McDonnell Douglas, that has a huge mansion, several acres, office buildings that they were looking at buying here recently. And I think it's for sale for like $21 million. It's an entire campus in North County. I think now that individuals are talking about this in Chesterfield and Wildwood, and for people that are not familiar with St. Louis, outside of Ladue, which probably is the richest zip code, I think, in the state of Missouri, Chesterfield and Wildwood, the residents that live there are definitely high net worth and high income individuals. And there's tons of surveillance cameras, very solid police force, fire department, and those individuals are not going to allow one inkling of illegal activity or strange behavior to take place. So this Kingdom of God Global Church group is being very bodacious by going to these areas of Chesterfield, Wildwood, and making these large purchases and just completely violating HOA laws and restrictions, and trying to do whatever they want. Nelly's house is tucked away, is one or two exits, well, maybe 3 exits before Six Flags in Eureka, and is up on a hill, and it's right there near our snow resort, fake snow resort, where people can go skiing. It's kind of in a secluded area, sits on top of a hill, very nice area. I can't think of the resort that people are going skiing at. I'm drawing a blank. But they have done nothing with the property. And looking at pictures where the news has been out there doing times of people vandalizing and breaking into it. I think at one point, I think Nelly paid like $2.1 million for it, and the place has been abandoned for 20 years. It probably needs $2 million worth of renovations to even get it up to par. So who knows what they're going to do with it. And normally, a lot of these city or county ordinances give you a certain specific amount of time to get the property in a healthy condition, because they don't want abandoned houses and buildings in their neighborhood. It decreases the value. But as a result of all of these high-end purchases, Kingdom of God Global Church has come across the radar of the FBI. You can't stay in the darkness very long, especially when you're dropping $2, $3, $4, $10 million on pieces of property, and then having tons of people, 20 and 30 people living in there, which is a violation, having noise coming out of your residence at all hours of the night, and tons of traffic, foot traffic and car traffic. That's going to show a red flag, and normally it goes from the local police, and if and everything, information is at a push of a button. People are very nosy, and they want to know who bought the $2 million house, the $3 million house. Was it Nelly, or was it somebody else? And then you come to find out that it's this organization, the Kingdom of God Global Church. People are going to start researching. And when you see that they have a gentleman who thinks he's the second coming of God, or the Messiah, that definitely brings up some red flags. on exactly what in the world is going on. And this gentleman, again, the leader is David E. Taylor, and who's making all these prophetic predictions about the world coming to an end. He calls himself the country's end time general. And we have to remember our history speaks for itself. You had the David Koresh's in Texas, and several other, Jonestown, and several other past occult leaders. And it might seem like their intentions are good, but it always ends in a disaster. So hopefully the feds are looking into this group. I think it's unfortunate that Nelly's name has to be associated with it. As I say, I know semi-personally that Nelly has not been associated with that property for at least 10 or 15 years, if not 20 years. Tell me what you think on this group, about this cult group that purchased Nelly's house and several other houses in the suburbs of Chesterfield and Wildwood, high net worth zip codes, and they've done nothing with the house, and they've got all kinds of things going on in their other pieces of property here in St. Louis. They own over 9 pieces of property. Take a look at the Kingdom of God Global Church. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.